right, welcome to another episode of Piecing It Together, the podcast where we take a look at a new movie and try to figure out what movies inspired it. Today on the show, we are going to be talking about The Menu. That's right, we still have a few 2022 films to cover, and they'll be coming up soon, as well as some new 2023 films, but we really wanted to talk about this one. And joining me is Jason Harris from Awesome Movie Year. He's also a food writer, so it is a perfect fit for him to come on the podcast and talk about this crazy movie. So we got a great conversation coming up. Before we get to it, I do want to remind you, of course, to make sure you're subscribed wherever it is that you listen to podcasts. And if you like what we do here on the show, make sure to drop us a 5-star rating. We'd appreciate that. You can also follow us on social media at PiecingPod, join our Facebook group, Popcorn and Puzzle Pieces, and, just get in touch if you like the show. We like that. We like hearing from you guys. If you have any puzzle pieces that you think of that we don't bring up here on the conversation, definitely tweet at me or tell us in the Popcorn and Puzzle Pieces group. Email me. I always read the listener puzzle pieces on the next trailer episode, and I would love to hear from you. So, with that said, let's talk about The Menu. Jason Harris is back with us. We're going to talk about The Menu. Jason, how's it going?
Dave, today we have a wonderful selection of items for you. At first, we're going to have some witty banter, after which we'll move into our deconstructed portion of the evening, where we take the movie and pull it apart so you can really feel all of the different elements that have made it what it is. And then we'll have a nice palate cleanser where a recommendation of something that one of us watched recently will occur. And finally, we will close it up with some wonderful repartee.
Mostly involving you just, making fun of me at the end of the episode, as you always do when you're on. But,
You can't hate tradition, Dave.
yeah, absolutely. That was a good intro. I like that. That was really good. We've been wanting to do this episode for a while now. You, of course, being a food writer and a foodie, like this movie is right up your alley. We talked about Pig last year, which may come up in this conversation at some point. But was this one you were super excited about?
Yes, this was one I was excited about, not just because of that, but because, is Ray Fiennes underrated at this point?
I think so.
He delivers every time out, doesn't he?
Yeah, it's true.
And Anna Taylor-Joy, was it Anna or Anya?
Anya.
She's great.
Yeah.
She's always great. So this looked like a fun thing that we were getting into. But Dave, I got a deal for you on this one. So I think on Pig, which could easily be a piece, I
Sure.
mentioned a lot of food movies.
Mm-hmm.
I will mention 0 food movies as our pieces on this one and leave them all to you.
Well, I mean, thank you. I appreciate that. But looking at my list here before we start getting into it, I think I might only have one, and it's not so much food, more of a snack movie. But, I guess it fits. So, we'll get to that. But I appreciate that. Thank you,
I just
Jason.
wanted to try something different. So I figured if anyone wanted to go back and listen, I think we did talk about a lot of food movies.
I would
on the
imagine.
last one. So.
Yeah, absolutely. But yeah, I agree. Ray Fiennes just every time it's so great to see him, and it's got a great cast overall. It's also fun to see John Leguizamo pop up and stuff. And Chau is having a really great year. I mean, between this and The Whale, so.
She's one, like, she's on it, dude. She's on that rocket right now of just like hitting everything out of the ballpark, and
yeah, she
absolutely throttles this. Everyone, they just did a good job casting this thing.
One other thing before we get into puzzle pieces, but the director, Mark Mylod, I'm not sure if it's his directorial debut as a feature filmmaker, but directed a bunch of episodes of Succession. So I know that must, also be on the list of things that like makes you excited about the movie.
That was one of the reasons I wanted to see it. I'll see anything that any director of Succession does.
Absolutely. Yeah. Well, let's get into it. What do you have for your first piece?
Dave, I'm going to go in a completely different direction, right? Because this, I guess, there's no way to talk about this movie without giving out spoilers.
Yeah,
right?
yeah.
So, this thing becomes something that the guests don't expect it to be, right?
Mm-hmm.
And they're on this island, so they don't really have a choice but to play along.
Right.
Because every time they don't, someone pretty much ends up dead at this point anyway. So I was thinking of Saw as my first puzzle piece for this one. You could go with Cube also, or something like that, but something in a very contained environment where you're playing a game that you don't know that you're playing, and a lot of death happens.
I agree. I actually had Saw on my list of possible pieces here. And yeah, I mean, it's obviously not aside from like one scene or maybe two scenes, it's not like a gory horror movie or anything like that. But the idea that these people are in this game that they don't necessarily realize and there's really no escape. Like, except for the one who does get away, which it's questionable whether or not she really does. And I think it's kind of open to interpretation. But there's no getting away from this situation that they've all gotten themselves into.
Except this is a more delightful or enjoyable version of that than like just kind of you know, horror porn or shock
Yeah.
horror porn or whatever you want to call it.
Yeah, because this is fun from beginning to end. There's like especially with that Ray Fiennes performance. I mean, it's a lot of fun. And I'll for my first puzzle piece, this is my like I said, my one food related piece. But I felt it was necessary. Willy Wonka and the Chocolate Factory. All these people are basically like the children who get a chance to go and see this eccentric chocolate maker's new treats for the first time because of a special invite. And here it's to get to see this eccentric chef's special, creations at his special meal at a private island. And of course, everything is just set up completely to mess with them, just like what Willy Wonka does to the kids. And everything is kind of playing on the people's character flaws. And of course, this is a big Eat the Rich movie. And so it plays into that as well. And I think in a lot of ways, it's like Willy Wonka for grown-ups.
What would the script or the movie look like if they were like, "Hey, we're gonna set it on any other night at this restaurant"? You know,
Yeah, just
it's
regulars.
just a regular service or whatnot.
Yeah,
So
yeah,
yeah, this is exactly what you're saying. This is Eat the Rich at its most decadent, I suppose.
there you
So,
go.
there's plenty of movies like that we've probably talked about, something like The Game or whatnot.
Sure.
Let me go, Dave, to another puzzle piece right now. And I got a good one here. That environment that we're talking about is not just the island, but the building, the restaurant, the shape of the restaurant plays so much into it. His house plays so much into it. The architecture plays so much into it. I felt that Parasite had to be a puzzle piece for this
Sure.
thing.
Yeah, absolutely. I had Parasite on my list too, but for like a completely different reason. I like that bringing up the architecture and all that. That definitely works. But to me, it's the rich versus poor where both sides are kind of awful. Like that. That's like that's the side of it that to me reminded me of Parasite. That like yeah, you've got this chef and he like is sick of these people who aren't appreciating the food anymore and aren't appreciating anything that they have in life. And you have all these rich people who are just like disgustingly wealthy and whatnot. And they're both kind of awful in this situation. And that's kind of like the main thing that made Parasite great.
Yeah, I mean, everything made Parasite
Yeah,
great, right? But
sure.
it is interesting when right, who do you root for, right? And
Right.
those movies we talk about a lot on Awesome Movie Year, where you don't have to like the person as long as you could root for them.
Hmm.
And I feel like that they give you that with Ray Fiennes, and I'm sure Anya Taylor-Joy. Those are probably the two main characters that you would be rooting for,
Yeah.
right? But I do think you could root for either of them at this point in time.
Yeah. No, I completely agree. I will go. I'm going to pivot for a second here and go on something that's not a movie, not TV, not anything like that. But I feel like it has to be a part of the conversation. And lately, we've been seeing a lot of movies that deal with escape rooms. And like that's kind of like a thing where it's like escape rooms have become so popular, and so why not make movies out of them? This kind of feels like instead of that, let's talk about dinner theater shows where that's become such a popular thing in like the last decade. And it seems like this is like, why not take that and make a movie out of it where there's like the whole mystery and the actors and the people involved don't really know what's real and what's fake. And in the same way that you can imagine why they would use escape rooms as a setup for a movie, you could totally see where a dinner theater type show would work its way in.
I'm a veteran. Did you know that I'm a veteran actor of dinner theater here in Las Vegas?
I think I might know that, but
Yeah.
it makes total sense either way.
Yeah, I did two like long running shows that One was the murder mystery. One was like the Italian spin-off thing. But this summer we did an immersive, which I think now we're calling it less dinner theater and more immersive
Oh
experiences,
yeah,
right?
sure.
We did an immersive where we were invited to a woman's birthday party, and we weren't supposed to act, but I mean we're actors, but we weren't supposed to acknowledge that we're actors. But
Mm.
we were supposed to interrupt the party multiple times with scenes from Casino. So we acted out these scenes from Casino, and it took place in the Liberace mansion, and it was pretty perfect night, like as far as those immersives go.
Were
So,
people just like, did they have any idea that that's the direction the night was gonna go, or?
well, so it was a woman's 40th birthday, right? And I think she had like a 70s theme to it, so it
Mhm.
kind of made sense.
Okay.
What's funny is we looked up her name because I helped cast the thing, and also acted in it, and my friend thought her name, who is that senator, one of these ultra right wing senators in Florida, Laura Blobert or something,
Oh,
right?
yeah, yeah, yeah.
So he was gonna back out because he's like, "I can't support her. She's, anti-abortion, she's anti-human
Sure.
rights." And so I looked it up, and it turns out that the woman was not her, but her name sounded similar. But the woman, I didn't recognize her name because it's her married name, but it turned out to be someone I went to high school with. So, a
Random.
whole thing there, buddy. So
It all comes back around to that.
yeah, look, we can you mentioned like not TV, but like I don't want this you have to mention those like Bourdain styles, really Bourdain as far as like the way that this is shot and the food stuff that
Yeah.
leads to Chef Table, what they mention in there and everything. So that whole kind of, I mean, and you could even go back to Iron Chef. Any type of beautifully shot food show, I think, counts as a piece.
Yeah.
I don't necessarily want that to be my next piece, but I did want to at least say we have to acknowledge that.
Yeah,
So
throw it on the list, even if you wanna, like, jump to another one. But, yeah, I mean, you've got the food, you've got the chef personality, and you've got the beautiful location, so it's kind of all there.
and I think Pig structurally did the same thing where they
Sure.
like coursed out the night,
Yeah.
via menu items. All right, here's one that I'm going to mention. At one point, this chef is so upset with one of his guests that he chops off his pinky,
Yeah.
and it seems so arbitrary. And it brought me back to a movie that I think a lot of people probably miss. It's a low budget film that was really good, and I don't ever know what happened to the filmmaker, but there was definitely the escalation of betting in there, cheap thrills, and at one point, I think for $20,000, one of them cut off their own fingers to do that. So, cheap thrills, my next puzzle piece
I
here.
I don't know this movie. What was this? Is this 90s? When is this?
I must have come out 5 or 6 years ago.
Oh,
It's
so
Pat
recent.
Healy, David Koechner in a very serious role.
Okay.
I think they made it for 100,000 and it did really well. I think Alamo Drafthouse put it out. But yeah, the whole point is like these friends go out or like this guy goes out and gets involved in this situation where it's like they just bet the whole night and the bets keep escalating further and further. More money, higher stakes, and at one point someone chops a finger off.
Sounds awesome.
Yeah, it's a good movie. It might even be a Christmas movie. Might be worth watching.
Nice. Right on. I will go with Ruben Östlund's The Square as my next puzzle piece, which kind of does for like the high art world what this is
Right.
doing with.
Eat the Rich.
Yeah,
Yeah.
exactly. It's Eat the Rich. It's kind of making fun of how, stuck up and over the top these like artists are in that case, and here chefs and food culture. And the square, it really like the big centerpiece is that whole like 10-minute dinner party scene in which the guy is like going around like a gorilla terrorizing the room. And here, the room is terrorized for pretty much the whole time.
Yeah. This took a different direction than what I thought, right? Because I thought, what was that movie that got canceled? The Hunt,
The
right?
Hunt, yeah.
Which wasn't a bad movie, and it really had anyone seen it, they wouldn't. They canceled it for literally the wrong reason, since it was literally the exact opposite of what they said it was going to be,
Right.
right? I thought this was going to be The Hunt, and
Mm,
it turned into something a little more, which was surviving the game or whatever,
sure.
But it turned into something a little more interesting than that, like this whole art piece that you're talking about,
Yeah.
which kind of leads me to my next puzzle piece. This does take place on an island, right? And I wanted to say, like, Tim Roth is making some really interesting, cool movies lately.
Hmm.
And it brought me back to Bergman Island, which I
Okay.
think was last year, maybe, or the year before.
Still haven't gotten a chance to watch it.
It's not the greatest movie, but it's a good movie.
Hmm.
There's a story within a story. You could argue that this movie has stories within the story,
Yeah.
but not in the same way. But the idea is they travel to this island, which is all dedicated to Ingmar Bergman, right? And like the whole impetus of this island is, I mean, this is where he lived, this is where he made his art, and this is a sacred place because that's what art means.
Mm.
And I think that's what we're getting with this chef. And this island is like, this is the only place he can do this art. What you're getting is straight from the ecosystem. And once we touch
Yeah.
it, we're ruining it. But like the idea of the island as the only place that this art could be done brought me to Bergman Island.
A little bit of a tangent, but does this food look good?
I mean, to me, anything looks good, but I did notice a foodie mistake in there.
Mm.
Nicholas Holt's character, when they're talking about the oysters, right?
Uh-huh.
You know, he says, Anya Taylor-Joy says, like, I just like the oysters without, just plain. And he goes, no, you need the mignonette for the mouthfeel. But a mignonette is basically just a sauce, like,
Okay.
or like some herbs and maybe some citrus. So there is no mouthfeel. It's just very liquidy, right?
Okay.
So if you want something for a mouthfeel against an oyster, you would do like a oyster casino, something baked with like breadcrumby stuff on top of it.
Okay.
So I noticed like one mistake on there. I've had food like this. I've had plenty of food like this, and it can either go, it can either be really good and elevated, or it can be like there's a restaurant in town and there's a chef here, and it's like, bro, instead of 30 ingredients on, the plate, maybe do 4 ingredients on the plate. So I would say the one thing about the Ray Fiennes character is he's not overdoing it by going with too many ingredients or anything like that, right?
Right.
He is taking something and just trying to utilize it in however he feels is an elevated form. It feels like a little like Jose Andres type to me. Yeah.
That's interesting. Yeah, because like those meals. I mean, of course, then we end on the burger, which I mean, everybody is gonna walk away thinking it looks incredible. But
All right, can we? This is a good point, and it's I guess our little intermezzo here, right?
mm,
This is what I was thinking about. We have to now move past this in our idea of foodie movies, right? Because every single one of them is
they love a burger.
right. It's I'm the chef, and I've done this, and I've liquefied that, and I've now used molecular gastronomy for this. Which, by the way, not every great chef does, right? Like some chefs just make really good food. And it always comes back to a burger, a Cuban sandwich, this,
Mhm.
breakfast, right? So we have to like get past this idea that like oh, what they're really looking for is just to simplify something or
Sure.
this or that. Like which I'm all for simplicity in food. I think 5 ingredients or less is there. I just want to see a different version of this story told of like, hey, I'm a chef. I've lost what I really started out for, and now I'm going back to it by making the simplest food. And then you and your mind are going to have a food memory that's going to bring you back to childhood. Like that's great when it happens, but we've seen it enough on screen now. So
Right.
like, where do we take this celebrity chef movie next? Is what I'm wondering.
Yeah, no, it's a good question. And when you said Cuban sandwich, that was chef, which I was thinking about, but I didn't include it on my list. But
Right,
yeah.
right. So is it your turn? I think.
Yes, it's back to me. I'm gonna go with the White Lotus. This kind of echoes a lot of the things we're already been talking about with Eat the Rich type projects, whether it's film or TV. But just each of the tables being separated as a different either family or grouping of people, and each of them having their own uh just awful qualities that like you kind of want everybody to get it in the end, and they do basically all get it in the end. And that's something that both seasons of the White Lotus have dealt with, more so the first one, but where each of the families has their own issues and their own like things that you could point at and be like, ugh, that's just awful.
I'm a big fan of The White Lotus. I've watched both seasons. I
Hmm.
still have no idea how he got that on the air and like how it's turned out to be so popular. Like
Yeah.
Mike White is an interesting writer and filmmaker to me, but like I'm just like, yeah, how did this break through? Right? How did
I
this one break through the
Every
pack?
time I see him talk about the show, I get the feeling that he feels that way too. He's like, when he talks about it, he's like, I don't know how this ended up working.
Right. And
You know?
then, we just finished this second season and you're like, I'm trying to think as a writer, like, did you just plot it like here, character arc, this one to this one. This is the beginning, this is the end, and like, okay, we'll just do these little points in between because like the stories in some ways are very minor on the White Lotus, right?
Yeah,
But a
yeah.
lot of major things happen in those stories. Like this season, there was the whole thing with the two couples, right? And
Mm,
like literally that whole story could have taken place in like one room almost,
yeah, pretty much.
maybe one room in the ocean. And it's interesting that they like get away with that over 7 episodes. Obviously, there were detours there, but yeah, no, that's kind of what I'm saying with that.
Yeah, no, absolutely. They fit a lot in, but it's also not really that much, and so but it's so many characters that it all kind of, takes its time, I guess. But, what do you have for your next
All right,
piece?
Janet McTeer plays Lillian Bloom, right? Who is this kind of haughty food critic type, right?
Mhm.
And I think it's Paul Edelstein plays Ted, like her. I don't know if he's like her editor or what he is, but he is just kind of like her lapdog. And it
Mm.
very much reminded me of, and her performance did too, of Meryl Streep and Stanley Tucci in The Devil Wears Prada.
Yeah, yeah, that makes sense.
Yeah. So, and obviously we're talking about print and, reviewing things and making her, she could make or break you. And that's
Yeah.
the same thing with Devil Wears Prada. So, that's my next piece there.
I like that. Yeah, I hadn't thought of that, but that definitely fits, and that was like a really fun little, of all the tables, that was like a really fun one there. So I like that. I'll go to my. This is actually my last piece. I couldn't think of the best possible version of this. I threw two movies in, but it's basically just the general idea of just inexplicably all of this person's followers just being down for the cause, like ride or die till the end. I thought of Fight Club, and I also thought of Midsommar. Both examples of that where everyone's just willing to kill themselves for their leader, and like you just kind of go with it because it's just what the movie's given you.
So I was thinking about that too. Like, did I want to go with like a cult type thing? And I think
Hmm.
I have the answer to
Okay.
which the piece is,
All right.
especially considering the endings. It's The Invitation.
Okay. Which I actually haven't seen.
You should see it. It's a
Yeah.
great movie. I'm gonna butcher her name, so I'm not gonna bother. But it's this writing team that does like a lot of bigger budget stuff, and they just try to take something smaller. And a director who's one of their wives. Is it Karen Kusama maybe or something?
Oh, I'm not sure.
But anyway, it's a real slow boil, and it kind of all comes down in that same regard as this one.
Okay. Well, I'm gonna
Yeah.
have to watch that for
Yeah,
sure.
she's great, and then they did Destroyer, like, anything
Oh
that team
yeah.
does, like, I'm interested in doing.
Right on.
My last piece, since I went with that now, there is that Nicholas Hoult character who is that basically what you're saying, like, that devotee who, like, says, "The chef can do no wrong.
Yeah.
He's everything he does is the most important thing ever," and I think we've mentioned it before on a few episodes, but it made me think of, Patton Oswalt in Big Fan.
Oh, sure.
Another, a good film there.
Yeah, yeah. And that's funny. Like, do you think there's foodie fans at that level? Like,
Yeah, 100%.
yeah.
So, I mean, they said that one couple had been there like 11 times,
Right.
right? It's just like anything else. Like, do they call him, some people call him chef, some people probably call him by the first name. Yeah, of course there are.
Yeah.
Like, I remember when Ferran Adria was closing El Bulli, which is, this is probably what, this restaurant and this kind of culture is,
Mm.
kind of trying to, imitate his El Bulli, which was his like French restaurant, not French restaurant, Spanish restaurant in Spain on the beach in this like tucked away town where all these people came and they just learned and like kind of were doing all this, molecular gastronomy and pushing the craft forward. And like people were like live tweeting the last meal, and like people were like
Nice.
reading it here and everything. Like, wow, this is what's going on at El Bulli tonight. And by the way, if there's one episode of Bourdain, I would recommend that. It's that episode. The El Bulli episode is pretty much a flawless television episode.
Nice, nice. Well, I'll read down our finished puzzle list and we'll get into some closing thoughts here. But we, of course, talked about Pig throughout, but then we also talked about Saw, and you threw in Cube as a alternate to that. Willy Wonka and the Chocolate Factory, Parasite, dinner theater shows, chef shows, Cheap Thrills, The Square, Bergman Island, The White Lotus, The Devil Wears Prada, Fight Club / Midsommar / The Invitation, and Big Fan. As far as like closing thoughts, like one thing I wanted to throw out there, I couldn't think of a good piece for this. I don't know, maybe you have something, but like kind of to that cult, aspect of the film, structuring this around the courses almost gives it like a cyclical, hypnotic kind of thing, which I couldn't think of a good movie for that, but I just thought it was like an interesting structure because it kind of adds to that, like drawing the people in and like getting they're like kind of lost in the whole situation, and
Yeah.
I think that's kind of fun.
Yeah, it's changing the act structure, and not to say that it doesn't have perhaps a 3-act structure, but, like, it's breaking it up, and Pig did the same thing, right?
Yeah, I
So,
guess so. Yeah.
yeah, I like stuff like that as well. I
Yeah.
mean, you know what? The answer is All That Jazz, which we covered on,
Yeah.
Awesome Movie Year, which I think is a 5-act structure as opposed to a 3-act
Right.
structure, so,
Yeah.
nerd talk.
Yeah.
Ooh.
But the other thing I was gonna ask you, this dinner, I think did they say it was 12.50 a
Yeah,
head?
$1,250,
Is
yeah.
that does that sound right for something like this?
I've never paid that much, but I imagine it's location, right?
Sure.
You're taking this ferry out. There are some of these where like you stay overnight
Mhm.
at, so I think, yeah, you could easily find something like that.
Yeah.
So, I mean, honestly, like as a food writer, I'm spoiled. Do you want to hear like a crazy food story?
Let's do it.
Have you ever watched Iron Chef?
I mean, I've seen an episode or 2.
You know who Morimoto is?
Yes.
He's probably, the most famous, well-renowned Iron Chef, in the history. He did the Japanese version, now the American version,
Mhm.
and he's probably got like 20 restaurants all over the world. So I get this assignment and from my editor when I was writing for the weekly, Las Vegas Weekly, right? And they go up, they're doing a little media preview. Go out there, they're gonna like just tour the room and you'll probably get a drink and like maybe an appetizer, right? And like I've
Mhm.
done like huge big dinners before, whatever. Like, no big deal. It's an assignment. Take it, right? So I go and like the PR team is like frantic. They don't know what's going on, like whatever. And then eventually they're like, okay, guys, just stay here. Here's the drink, whatever. And then they lead us to the back of this room, this stainless steel tap-in grill where like, you cook on, right? And Morimoto comes out
Uh-huh.
and there's 10 of us and he cooks for us for 3 hours, right? And it's like A5 Wagyu sukiyaki and all this like crazy stuff, right? And he goes, anyone with dietary restrictions and one woman was a vegetarian. So
Mhm.
he literally cooked 2 meals by himself, maybe one assistant for 3 hours. Then he had his dessert chef come out and like cook. And I think there was like he was cooking 10 portions, but because one person was a vegetarian, like there was an extra portion. And he kept going, big guy, you take, to me, right? And so when I was started writing this article, I hit up the PR team and they're like, "Hey, I go, can you get me the menu? Because like I can talk about it." And they're like, "No, there was no menu. We had no idea he was going to do that."
Just
So
doing whatever.
yeah, he just
Yeah.
came out and decided to cook for 3 hours. So that was probably the closest I've gotten to one of those. I mean, that had to be like a $500 or something.
Probably,
Yeah.
yeah.
So
That's awesome. That's like seeing like some like big rock star in like an acoustic like little,
it's
press room or
right,
something.
like
Yeah.
the dream deal right
Yeah.
there. So that's probably my most memorable meal, maybe I'd say.
Yeah.
Yeah,
That's
one
awesome.
of them. Yeah.
I love it. I love it. Well, any other closing thoughts about the menu?
Well, I like this movie. Again, it's a weird year. I'm sure we'll talk more about it on our closing episode, but our top 10 list. But which I think this has a good chance of making one of our lists here. But
Yeah.
what's interesting is like this year more than any other, like I just thought this year is terrible. And then like, like they just all waited until like December and November more than any other year.
Yeah.
And now like we're getting this backlog of like interesting good movies, you know?
We'll talk about it more on that top 10 episode, but like while I don't agree that the year was terrible, I do agree that they really back-ended it. Like everything is in these last few months.
It's
Like,
wild, dude.
yeah, it's
Yeah.
ridiculous. I don't know why they do that, but we'll talk about it more later. But speaking of which, is there another movie you watched recently you'd like to recommend to our listeners?
Yeah, I thought since I didn't mention any food movies here,
Hmm.
I would save it for the recommendation. I'll do one food movie and one food show that I think we already did recommend on an episode. So the food movie I just watched yesterday is Boiling Point with
Ooh.
Stephen Graham. Have you seen this movie?
I still haven't. Like I'm just like saving it. I might watch it on Christmas. We'll see.
It's interesting. It's an hour and a half. It's one take, right? So it's
Mhm.
one of these one take movies that I mean, dude, the way they stage this thing and like the kind of movement back and forth and the sound, how they got everything. I mean, I'm sure they shot it like, actually, I was reading about it. I think they were planning on shooting it 8 times, and then they were gonna, but because of COVID, they could only
Yeah.
shoot it 4 times. But so it's one night in a restaurant, and the chef, a celebrity chef who's like kind of feeling the pressure of everything, and just kind of the breakdown of that night and all these characters. And like I said, the fact that it's all single take very much felt like that Bloody Nose, Empty Pockets feel that, like,
Yeah.
was a really good movie. This is a good movie. It's an hour and a half, but you feel like, I mean, it weighs on you because it's one take. There's no
Right.
break
Sure.
on it. And Stephen Graham is awesome. He's one of these actors you should
He's
always
awesome.
watch, right?
Yeah.
I think the TV show, we mentioned it. I mean, I don't have to publicize it. It's a breakout hit this year, but The Bear,
Sure.
which is
Yeah.
a very good show and a pretty honest look at what goes on in these kitchens and with this like chefs and the mental health aspects of the cooking industry. I really like The Bear also.
We watched the first 2 episodes. I haven't gotten a chance to finish it, but I'm sure we will at some point. It's really good from what
Yeah,
I've seen.
you should get back to it.
Jason, tell people what you got going on with comedy and Awesome Movie Year and everything else you got going on.
Listen, Dave, comedy, Eat This Comedy is the perfect thing to plug here since we actually do this now.
Yeah.
So since I'm a food
You
writer,
kill the people who come to see you.
it depends how they behave.
Yeah.
But I team up with restaurants. We curate a special menu for one all-in price. You get dinner and a show, so to speak, right? So you get a dope meal and then hopefully a dope comedy show afterwards, right? And we've had a good residency at Honey Salt this past year in 2022. We're looking to take it on the road if anyone is in another area listening to this and has suggestions. I think we're going to take some on the road in 23. Obviously, the trivia party I talk about enough. So that's kind of what's going on here. I'm just watching a lot of movies and trying to make a movie. So give me money, message me, and we'll talk. And Dave, I will say my movie, like one that you mentioned, and in this case, is also not a traditional 3-act structure.
Oh, well, there we go. I'm excited to hear more about it when the time comes.
Give me money, Dave.
I'm Josh Bell.
And I'm Jason Harris, and we co-host a podcast called Awesome Movie Year.
Each season, we take a look back at an awesome year for movies, which is every year.
We deep dive into these specific years, and we pick out why they were such great years for films. We go over the biggest hits, the biggest flops, the best picture, some personal picks, some cult classics.
Years we've covered in past seasons include 1994, 2003, 1977, and 1984, and we've got all of film history to look forward to. So check us out at awesomemovieyear.com or wherever you listen to podcasts.
All right, so I hope you enjoyed that conversation about the menu. Thanks, as always, to Jason Harris for joining me on the show. Make sure you're subscribed to Awesome Movie Year, too. We're about to finish up that season on the films of 1953, move on to another season. Lots of great stuff coming over there. And, of course, I recently released a new album called More Content. I've been talking about it on the show a lot lately, and I'm going to keep talking about it for a little while. This week, I'm putting out a new music video called Blacklight, and also the review from my mom just went up over on my bydavidrosen.com website. Lots of stuff around More Content coming. A couple more music videos on the way, too. You can check out the limited edition CD of More Content on my Bandcamp. That's davidrosen.bandcamp.com. And, of course, the album is available on all the streaming sites as well. Add it to your favorite playlists on Spotify or Apple Music. And I appreciate all the support, guys. Also, of course, make sure you're subscribed to Piecing It Together wherever you listen to podcasts. Drop us a 5-star rating if you'd like. We'd appreciate that. And follow us on social media at PiecingPod. Also, we do have a Patreon, the Produced by David Rosen Patreon, where I post bonus and advanced content from Piecing It Together, from Awesome Movie Year, and from my music career. So check that out, patreon.com/bydavidrosen. Lots more stuff hitting there in the coming weeks and throughout the year. We've got a lot planned. So, I guess that does it for today. And this being a food movie, I figured it would be a good time to dig back into my Jewish comedy rap Fakakta's album Lock Stars and the song The Deli to play us out here. I think I might have played this before, but it's just such a perfect song for a food-related movie. So Let's go with that. We'll get back to my David Rosen music on the next episode, I'm sure. But I hope you enjoy the deli, and we'll be back with more Piecing It Together real soon.
Chilling at the deli, filling up my belly.
Blintzes and knishes, you know I don't do dishes at the
Chilling
deli.
at the deli, filling up my belly. Yeah, the deli, I love the deli.
On the Atkins diet, he prescribed Hebrew National. Man, this diet's irrational. 57 hot dogs, no bun, can't even put sugar in my coffee, son. But no matter what your diet, you really gotta try it. You know there's something for everyone at the
Chilling
deli.
at the deli,
I
filling up my belly. Yeah, the deli, I love the deli.
Waiter at the deli, he was kinda young, but I told him that's okay, baby, give me some tongue. I like it raw, and don't forget that side of coleslaw. Just give me some salami, and don't you call me mommy at the deli. The deli, I love the deli. The deli,
I love the deli. I don't discriminate with nookie. You know I take a black or white cookie. I love to nibble,
but I hate that cookie with the cherry in the middle. I mean, what the hell? I don't wanna dwell, but that cookie tastes like crap. Mongol bread is where it's at. Kasha with bow ties, liver, worsted, Rubens, focaccia is so fly. We be always
My baby's
grooving.
got some extra baggage. She got a booty shaped like stuffed cabbage. She's such a giver, so I give the gift of chopped liver. Brisket, just like grandma's, but it kinda gives me gas. I'm checking out the whitefish salad.
Sir, please don't lean on the glass.
Matzo ball soup, blitzes, kugel, and potato lockers.
That is how we roll, because you're rolling with focaccia at the deli. The deli, I love the deli. The deli,
I love the deli.
Lower East Side Stripes Matzah Factory. Don't forget Ross and Daughters, Ratner's and Katz's Deli. 2nd Avenue Deli, R.I.P. But you can still get your corned beef on its stage in Carnegie. H&H Bagels, I wish I could finagle, cause I'm wishing for this grub and missing NYC.
When I'm doing Hollywood, yeah, the traffic gets so whack. So I grab a drink at Kibitz Room and hit Kansas for a snack.
And Jerry's Deli is so fly.
Yeah, that Jerry's my kind of guy. Don't need no suit and tie to get some matzo bride.
In Boynton Beach, it's so hot that I always schwitz. But I'll put up with the heat for a meal at Leguizamo.
Delray Beach,
Locks around the clock,
Detroit,
Star Deli, and Zingerman's Rocks. Back in Vegas, wander through the desert, remember when? Thank God we've got Bagel Mania and Deli Dan. Yeah, we all love to eat, you know the Jews are major players. And on all our birthdays,
we all get 7 layers.
The deli, I love the deli. The deli,
I love the deli.
Honey, did you eat?
Come on, eat.
An All Points West production, produced by David Rosen in Las Vegas.